She looked him dead in the eye and said, "My family built this town. What makes you think you can touch me?" Wrong answer. A Bentley, a bleeding kid on asphalt, and 30 seconds that proved money doesn't make you bulletproof. You're about to witness something that'll restore your faith that justice still exists in this country. Because what happened in that Providence courtroom didn't just break the internet. It reminded every entitled person out there that there's still one place your lawyer can't save you. This is about an 8-year-old boy named Miguel. A millionaire who thought she was untouchable. And the moment Judge Frank Caprio made sure the whole world knew, some things you cannot buy your way out of. Let me paint you a picture. It's a Thursday afternoon in Elmwood. You know that neighborhood, right? Not the glossy part of Providence where everything's been renovated, and there's a Starbucks on every corner. This is real Providence, where construction workers come home tired, where moms work double shifts just to keep the lights on, where kids play soccer in the street because that's what childhood looks like when your backyard is the size of a parking spot. Miguel Santos is 8 years old, gap-toothed smile, obsessed with fire trucks. That kid who still believes superheroes are real, and maybe, just maybe, he could be one someday. He's walking home from Roger Williams Elementary with his big sister, Maria. She's 10. She's holding his hand because that's what big sisters do. They protect you. The light changes. The crosswalk signal flashes white. Mrs. Rodriguez, the crossing guard everyone in the neighborhood knows by name, raises her stop sign. Miguel steps into that crosswalk, and that's when everything changes. Isabella Montgomery is flying through that school zone in a $250,000 Bentley, like she's on a racetrack, not speeding a little, not, oops, I didn't see the sign speeding. We're talking 45 and a 20. We're talking past children, past the crossing guard waving her arms, past every single warning that screams, "Slow down." The impact sounds like a gunshot. Miguel's tiny body launches 15 feet through the air. His red backpack flies off mid-flight. His sister's scream cuts through everything. He hits the pavement and doesn't move. Blood pools under his head. Ribs shattered, skull fractured. His left arm twisted at an angle that makes grown men look away. The Bentley screeches to a stop. Isabella Montgomery steps out. Designer heels. Hermes bag that costs more than Carlos Santos makes in 6 months of construction work. And here's the part that makes your blood boil. She doesn't run to Miguel. She walks around to inspect her bumper. 3 neighbors are already sprinting toward that little boy. Mrs. Rodriguez is on her knees screaming for someone to call 911. Maria is sobbing, holding her brother's hand, begging him to wake up. And Isabella? She stands there, 30 full seconds, staring down at this unconscious child bleeding on her street in her city that her family built. The traffic camera catches everything. Her face, the calculation. The moment she decides, then she gets back in her Bentley and drives away, left an 8-year-old to die because she had somewhere to be. Miguel's in surgery for 6 hours, punctured lung, internal bleeding. Doctors telling his parents they're not sure if he'll wake up normal, if that arm will ever work right, if their baby will ever be their baby again. Carlos Santos is still in his construction clothes when he gets to the hospital. Concrete dust on his jeans. Hands shaking so bad he can barely sign the consent forms. Maria, his wife, not the daughter, she works as a home health aide. Takes care of old folks who can't take care of themselves. She's gentle, patient, the kind of person who makes the world better just by being in it. But right now, she's falling apart in that ICU waiting room, praying in Spanish, clutching a rosary that belonged to her grandmother, begging God not to take her baby. This is a family that works 70-hour weeks just to make rent. Carlos leaves for work before sunrise and comes home after midnight. They've never asked for handouts, never complained. They're the backbone of this country, The people who build things while other people count their money. And someone just tried to kill their son and drove away like he was a deer. 3 days later, Isabella Montgomery walks into Judge Frank Caprio's courtroom. And listen, if you don't know Judge Caprio, you need to. This man is a legend. Not because he's tough, because he sees people. He's been on that bench for 38 years, and he treats a homeless guy with the same respect he'd treat a CEO. But he doesn't play games. The courtroom is packed. Word spread fast about this case. You've got families who showed up just to watch, local news cameras. And attention in that room you could cut with a knife. The bailiff calls the case. The State of Rhode Island versus Isabella Catherine Montgomery. Vehicular assault, leaving the scene, reckless endangerment of a minor. Those doors open. And in walks privilege. Everything about Isabella screams money. The kind of money that's been around so long, it doesn't even try anymore. Custom Chanel suit. Louis Vuitton heels clicking on that floor like she owns it. Diamond earrings catching the fluorescent light. That Hermes bag, casually hanging off her arm like it's a grocery tote. But it's not the luxury that makes people stare. It's the attitude. She's checking her Rolex while she walks, barely glances at the court officers, treats them like furniture, like people who exist to get out of her way. You can see it in her face. She's annoyed she has to be here. This woman has never been told no in her entire life. And she's about to learn what that word means. Judge Caprio is reading through the file. You can see his jaw tightening, his expression getting darker with every page. "Ms. Montgomery," he starts, and his voice has that warmth he's famous for, but there's steel underneath it. "You understand the charges?" Isabella barely looks up from her phone. "Yes, Your Honor. My attorney explained everything. We're hoping to resolve this quickly. I have a charity luncheon at noon." Dead silence. She wants to resolve this quickly. Because of lunch. While an 8-year-old fights for his life in the ICU, this woman is worried about salmon and white wine with her country club friends. Judge Caprio takes off his glasses. That's his move. If you've watched his show, you know, when those glasses come off, someone's about to learn something. "Ms. Montgomery, are you aware that Miguel Santos is currently in intensive care?" Isabella's jaw tightens just a fraction. "Yes, I understand there was an accident. But the child ran into the street. I couldn't stop. These things happen in neighborhoods like that. Neighborhoods like that. Let that sink in." She just said the quiet part out loud. This is what she thinks. That Miguel's life matters less because of his zip code. Because his parents don't have trust funds. Because his last name isn't on a hospital wing. Judge Caprio doesn't flinch. Let's watch the footage. The screen flickers on, and what unfolds next makes the entire courtroom go silent. You see Isabella's white Bentley approaching. Fast. Too fast. You see Miguel, red backpack bright as a stop sign, holding his sister's hand, waiting for the signal. The light changes. Misses. Rodriguez raises her stop sign. Miguel steps into that crosswalk. Exactly where he should be. Exactly where the law says he's safe. Isabella's Bentley doesn't even brake. The impact is brutal. Even on grainy traffic camera footage, you see that little boy's body fly through the air like he weighs nothing. His sister's mouth opens in a scream you can't hear, but you feel. Other kids scatter like they're under attack. Mrs. Rodriguez runs toward Miguel's motionless body. And Isabella. She gets out of her car, walks around, checks her bumper with more concern than she shows that child lying in a pool of blood 10 feet away. For 30 seconds, they time it, she stands there, looking down at him, deciding. Then she gets back in her car and leaves. The courtroom erupts. People are gasping. Someone yells, "How could you?" Judge Caprio raises his hand for silence, but his eyes never leave Isabella's face. "Ms. Montgomery, you watched yourself strike a child, and then you left him to die. Comments?" Isabella looks annoyed. Not guilty, not horrified. Annoyed that she has to explain herself. Your Honor, I was in shock. I panicked. I'd never been in an accident before. Judge Caprio's voice cuts through like a blade. The camera shows you standing there for 30 seconds, assessing, then consciously choosing to leave. That's not panic. That's a decision. And this is where Isabella destroys herself. The mask slips. The fake concern evaporates. And you see who she really is. "Look, Your Honor," she says, and there's impatience bleeding through every word. "I understand this looks bad, but let's be realistic here. My insurance covers the medical bills. I'm prepared to write a check right now for any additional expenses." She leans forward slightly, like she's about to close a business deal. The Montgomery family has been generous to this city for generations. One mistake shouldn't overshadow a lifetime of philanthropy. Judge Caprio's face goes hard as stone. "Ms. Montgomery, you're treating a child's life like a business transaction." Isabella scoffs. Actually scoffs. Like he's being unreasonable. "Because that's what it is, Your Honor. Everything is. I have money. This family needs money. $500,000. That's more than most people in that neighborhood see in their lifetimes." The courtroom explodes, gasps, shouts. Someone yells, "Unbelievable!" Another voice, "She's disgusting!" Judge Caprio raises his hand for quiet. But his eyes are locked on Isabella like he's seeing something he can't quite believe exists. "Ms. Montgomery, did you just offer to buy your way out of criminal charges for nearly killing a child?" And then a voice from the back. Quiet, steady. "Your Honor, may I speak?" Carlos Santos stands up. He's still in his work clothes, jeans covered in concrete dust, hands calloused and rough from years of labor, shoulders strong from carrying weight that would break most men. But his eyes are what get you. Tired, heartbroken, but clear. He looks directly at Isabella Montgomery, and he speaks in a voice that doesn't shake. "Ma'am, you hit my son. You left him to die on the street like he was nothing. And now you think you can buy us?" He takes a breath. "My son is 8 years old. He loves soccer. He wants to be a firefighter so he can save people. Right now, he's in that hospital with tubes in his chest because you couldn't slow down. You think 500,000 is a lot. You're right. My family could live on that for 20 years. Maybe more." Another breath, steady. "But I wouldn't take 5 million. Because the second I take your money, that means my son's life has a price tag. And his life, it's priceless." The courtroom erupts in applause. People are standing. Someone's crying. It's one of those moments where you remember what dignity looks like. Judge Caprio lets it happen. Lets Carlos receive the recognition he deserves. Because that's the kind of man Carlos Santos is. The kind who works 3 jobs and still has the strength to choose principle over comfort. Judge Caprio turns back to Isabella, and his voice is quiet, controlled. But you can hear the fury underneath. "Ms. Montgomery, you just heard from a man who works himself to exhaustion every single day, whose son is fighting for his life because of your choices. A man who just refused more money than he'll ever see because principles matter more than your guilt offering. What do you have to say?" Isabella's composure finally cracks. "This is ridiculous." Her voice goes sharp, high, the polished veneer shattering. "I made a good faith offer. I'm trying to help, and they're acting like I'm the villain here. I didn't mean to hit anyone. It was an accident." Judge Caprio opens another folder. Thicker, older. "Ms. Montgomery, in the last 5 years, you've received 12 speeding tickets, all in school zones. All paid immediately through your attorney, so you never had to show up in court. You've been driving like laws don't apply to you for years." The prosecutor steps forward. 3 years ago, Newport. Ms. Montgomery struck a cyclist and fled the scene. Settled out of court for an undisclosed amount. The cyclist suffered permanent nerve damage. Judge Caprio's voice rises. "You've done this before. Isabella explodes. She actually stands up, points her finger at Judge Caprio like she's scolding a servant. "I'm tired of this. Yes, I hit the kid. Yes, I left. So what?" Her voice is shaking now, not with remorse, but with rage that she's being held accountable. "I have money. I can make this go away. My family has more influence in this city than you do. We fund your salary. You work for us." The courtroom goes absolutely insane. People shouting, standing up. The bailiff steps forward, hand moving toward his belt. But Judge Caprio doesn't move. He just sits there, letting Isabella's words hang in the air for everyone to hear, letting her condemn herself with her own mouth. When the noise finally dies down, he speaks, and his voice is so quiet that everyone leans forward to hear. "Ms. Montgomery, you just told this court that you believe your wealth places you above the law. You just told a father whose child is fighting for his life that money can erase attempted vehicular homicide. You just told me that your family's donations give you the right to endanger children." He stands up. The whole courtroom holds its breath. "You are wrong about all of it." Judge Caprio picks up his gavel. But before he brings it down, he speaks directly to Isabella, with words that will echo long after this case is closed. "Isabella Montgomery, you walked into this courtroom believing your money made you untouchable. You tried to purchase a child's life like you were buying a car. You threatened this court. You showed contempt for a family whose only crime was being born without a trust fund." His voice gets harder. "Today, you learn that some things cannot be purchased. Not justice, not dignity. And sure as hell not the safety of our children." The gavel comes down like thunder. "Guilty on all charges. 2 years in state prison. No parole eligibility. Driver's license permanently revoked. $1 million in restitution to the Santos family." People are gasping. Isabella's face goes white. But Judge Caprio isn't done. "You will complete 2,000 hours of community service in the pediatric ward at Rhode Island Hospital. You will see firsthand what happens when people like you treat children like collateral damage." He leans forward. "Your family's charitable foundation will establish a permanent fund for traffic safety education in every Providence school. Your Bentley will be sold. Proceeds go to trauma counseling for every child who witnessed that accident." Isabella tries to speak, but he cuts her off. "Furthermore, you will personally attend every single one of Miguel Santos's medical appointments until he is fully recovered. You will see what your 30 seconds of convenience cost that little boy and his family. You will understand that actions have consequences, even for you." Isabella is being handcuffed. She's crying now. Not tears of remorse, tears of disbelief that this is actually happening to her. As they lead her away, Carlos Santos approaches the bench. "Your Honor," he says quietly, and his voice is thick with emotion. "Thank you. Thank you for showing my son that, whether you're rich or poor, we all matter the same under God's law." Judge Caprio nods, and you can see his eyes are wet. "Mr. Santos, your son is blessed to have a father who values dignity over dollars. Miguel will recover, and he'll grow up knowing that justice still exists for everyone." Carlos turns to leave, then stops. Looks back. "My wife and we're going to use that money to buy a safe home. And we're starting a scholarship fund for kids like Miguel, kids whose parents work 3 jobs. So maybe they won't have to fight as hard as we did." Pause. That's what integrity looks like. 6 months later, Miguel walked back into Roger Williams Elementary, fully recovered, except for a small scar on his forehead that his classmates told him looked like a lightning bolt, like he was a superhero. Miguel loved that. Isabella Montgomery completed her first year in prison, learning humility she'd never needed before, learning that the world doesn't revolve around her bank account. Some reports say she's actually changed, that she volunteers in that pediatric ward not because she has to, but because she finally understands what she took for granted. I hope that's true. The Montgomery Trust established a $5 million traffic safety fund. Carlos and Maria Santos bought a modest home in a neighborhood where their kids can play outside without fear. And they kept their promise. They started a scholarship fund for working-class students, named it after Miguel's grandmother, who immigrated to this country with nothing but hope. Judge Caprio's handling of this case went viral. Over 100 million views worldwide. Not because people love watching someone get destroyed in court, though, let's be honest, Isabella kind of deserved it, but because it proved something we desperately needed to see. That justice can be blind. That compassion doesn't mean letting people off the hook. That somewhere in this country there are still judges who will choose children over checkbooks every single time. This is what happens when entitlement meets absolute accountability. This is what happens when someone finally looks wealth in the eye and says, no, not this time, not here. This is Isabella Montgomery's story, but it's also Carlos Santos's story, and Miguel's. And every parent who's ever walked their kid to school and prayed they make it home safe. It's a reminder that your bank account is no defense against the truth. Here's what I need you to understand. This case matters. Not because it's dramatic, not because it went viral. It matters because it proves that when systems work the way they're supposed to, when judges have courage, when families have integrity, justice is possible. Even for the powerless, even against the powerful. Miguel Santos is 12 now, still wants to be a firefighter, still believes in heroes, because he saw one, in a courtroom, behind a bench. His name was Frank Caprio. And he reminded us all that some lines should never be crossed. No matter how much money you have, no matter whose name is on which building, no matter how many charity luncheons you attend. If this story hit you, if you believe our children deserve protection from people who think money makes them bulletproof, do me a favor. Don't just subscribe. That's easy. Comment justice. If you believe there should be more judges like Frank Caprio, share this with someone who needs to hear it. Someone who's fighting for what's right even when it costs them. Someone who's raising kids in a world that feels like it's rigged for the rich. Because stories like this, they're rare. And we need to remind each other they're possible. That somewhere out there, justice still exists. That human dignity still matters. That an 8-year-old boy's life is worth more than any check a millionaire can write. The next time you see someone drive like laws don't apply to them, remember Miguel Santos. Remember Carlos, standing in that courtroom choosing principle over comfort. Remember Isabella Montgomery learning the hardest lesson of her life. And remember, there's always a courtroom somewhere, waiting to teach people what they should have learned a long time ago. Some things you just can't buy.